Right, today you're joining me in the hallway of this house. We've got two different floor types, the old parquet flooring and the newer section with underfloor heating wires. I've gone ahead and covered them with adhesive, and like the title suggests, this one turns out to be an absolute beaut, installing tumbled marble tiles in a classic diamond pattern. So let's get into it. With two different floor levels, the first job is levelling the substrate. Using my datum line technique, I'll link above, I identify the highest point, which is marked right here on the parquet floor. You can see I've placed squares of backerboard as guides for self-levelling. Each one reads true level from the highest point. So I mixed up some self-levelling compound and poured it section by section. I use level backerboard strips in doorways and to divide areas. This keeps the pour more manageable. Once dry, I laid some uncoupling mat over the whole floor to prevent any future movement issues. And I also managed to enlist Ernest the dog for some budget-friendly quality control. Floor preparation is half the battle, so now with a level base and uncoupling mat installed, we're ready for tiles. First up, I lay out some tiles to give a feel for the pattern and sizing. These are marble tiles, so pencils only and no pens, otherwise you'll get stains. They're going to need sealing after installation, but more on that later. For the setting out, I needed to find what to square the tiles up with, as the chances of everything being square in a hallway like this are slim. By laying a tile against the doors, I could check the alignment with the cupboards, which worked out to be good. So then I picked a random measurement of a metre, marked it both ends off of the door, and continued a line all the way up the hallway. I could then use that line to measure to see what was square with the door and what wasn't. The left wall was good, the right one was a bit in and out, so I was happy to let that wall be what it will be and have my tiles square with the door and the left wall. This way everything looks straight when you walk into the house. Coming square off of doors like bifolds is usually the way to go when you can. So I've got my square, now for the tile set out. For the width, as it's a hallway, I wanted to make sure I had even cuts either side of the galley section. So I measured from the two furthest points and got a centre mark. I could then measure from that to my square line and transfer that measurement to make a central line for my tiling to follow. I now have a line that is for my square and centered in the hallway. I could then just lay some tiles out on my line to make sure the side cuts were going to be okay. And these were pretty decent cuts, so I was happy with that. For the length, I kept it simple as there are so many things to set out for, so I just took half a tile from the cupboards. That way when you walk in you see a full pattern. With all the doorways and bits and pieces up the hall, it would be what it would be. I knew I'd get some decent cuts and some trickier cuts, but that's the luck with a diamond pattern. It's good to dry lay something like this where there's quite a bit of cutting involved. So I started by cutting the half tile for my cupboard start point. As these are tumbled marble, they are quite soft, so I could get away with using an angle grinder with a decent porcelain blade. But if they were just marble, I'd probably need water to assist the cut. So you can see here I can just line the point up with my line, and I'd follow that from now the whole way through the floor. So I just punched on cutting and dry laying tiles. For marking cuts there's plenty of ways, but I find using a tape and a speed square to be quick and effective. This one is fairly self-explanatory. I just mark the length, draw the line and cut it. It's always good to keep any off cuts with something like this as they can always come in handy. For this L cut I've cut the half already. I can then hold my tape down the tile line, allowing a joint and some play to take a measurement. The speed square will give me the angle needed for the door, so I can mark that. Then for the L notch you can just mark the distances as before. Connect the marks up and you have your shape to cut out. Having no skirtings on for this kind of thing helps, as you can allow yourself a bit of play if needed. Again, just using the angle grinder to follow the lines and cut the shape. And there we go, straight in. Having a speed square for diamond tiling makes it a lot easier than it looks. For straight cuts, the quickest and easiest way I find is to mark the distance holding the tape central to the tile point. Here you can see 37 centimeters touches the point of the tile. So to allow for the joints and some play, I'd mark this at 36.5 centimeters. Then using my speed square, I can draw the line to be cut. And as we're square with the door, they can all be cut at the same size, and that's as easy as that. With the sliding doorway here, I need the tiles to finish in the centre for the floor transition, and I don't have anything to mark to. I could use a bit of wood and line it up with both sides, but I'm going to show you an easy way if you've got a laser level. So today I'm using a Hooper S04CG laser level, and if you haven't tried one of these before, the best thing about the Hooper laser levels is their adjustment on the mounting bracket. You can see here how you have full control over slight movements to get it exactly where you need it. There's not many laser levels out there that have the same adjustment as the Hooper bracket, and for things like this it's great. You can just stick it or fix it to the frame, then just line it up with the centre. And now I can mark exactly where the tile needs to be cut. I'm no laser level expert, I'll do a review on this at some point, but it comes with everything you need, like an LED screen, changeable batteries, remote control, and all the bells and whistles. It seems a great product. So from here, it's just a case of using these techniques to mark and cut the tiles. The only time I did something a bit different was with the rounded stair cut. I cut the tile to size, then used a bit of mat to give me a rough shape. Using my pen, I could then just fine tune it. Once that was removed, it sat in great. With cuts like this, I surprise myself sometimes in what you can get off without it breaking. But I knew I'd be happy once that one was firmly fixed in place. Now it's time to take the tiles up. You can see on most rows before adding the next, I've drawn a line down them as a guide. This helps when it comes to fixing to make sure everything is in the right place, so all the cuts fit as dry laid. Before removing, I also letter and stack the tiles in order accordingly so I know where everything goes. For fixing, I'm using a flexible rapid set adhesive, great if you're experienced and need to walk on them the same day, otherwise I'd stick to a slow set. Once mixed, I spread using a standard 10mm notch trowel in sections, with my lines there to guide me. With matting, you want to flat side the indents first to fill them up. Then use your trowel as normal to spread your notches, trying to keep the ribs in the same direction. With a tile this size, it's sufficient to just back edge with the flat side of the trowel. If they were bigger, I'd probably spread 6mm on the back. Then sticking to my line, I'm just pushing down with a wiggle to collapse the ribs, cleaning as I go and adding 2mm spacers. I use my level as a straight edge and make sure my point is on my main guideline. With the floor preparation, you can see here I don't have to worry about level too much. Everything should be pretty good, and I wouldn't bother with level clips for a natural stone tile this size. The only thing I needed to check was that the door opened fine, as when I did the prep I knew it was going to be tight. But I had about 5mm gap, so all good there. So from there I just punched on fixing the tiles I'd pre-cut. Once I got all my dry laid tiles down, I'd stop sticking and go for another day of just marking and cutting tiles. And here's another technique for getting a line across the door frame using a piece of wood and a level to line it up and draw a line. That allowed me to mark and cut the door cut, then I could go about fixing my second batch of pre-cut tiles. And apart from the marble, absolutely drying my hands out, hence the gloves you can see. Everything was going down pretty smoothly and I just had a few more tiles to fix. Before I started, I just went around with a multi-tool and trimmed down all the door stops you could slide the tile underneath. That makes the tile a lot easier to mark and gives you a nicer cut. And after a lot of dust and moisturiser on my hands, that was the tiles all fixed down. But no rest there. With the tiles set, it's on to the ceiling. This will be one of 2 coats before and after grouting. You can apply it with a roller, a brush or a sponge like I'm doing here. I'm just coating it onto the tiles, and once it starts to go a bit tacky, I'm just using a cloth to buff it. This will prevent grout haze and stains later on. With that all dry, for the grout I chose a mid-grey Kirikol Fugabella, a nice contrast to the black and white tiles. So with a grout float and just applying it to the joints, I'm trying to get as much excess off as I can. With the tile being natural stone, you've got to keep an eye on it going off quickly on the surface with the amount of suction the tile has, but the sealer will stop that process a bit. So before getting too carried away, I always go back and check my first patch to see if it's starting to go dry. For me it was fine, so I punched on and got most of the floor on. If you're new to grouting, just work in small sections at a time. Don't create stress for yourself. The cleanup involves a dirty wash to remove excess from the face of the tile, then followed by a neater pass to shape the joints and clean the tiles. Once the grout is dry, you can come back with a proper clean wash later to finish it up nicely. It's very important when grouting to always work with a barely damp sponge. You don't want to get too much water into the grout. That can cause issues, so always fully wring out the sponge with every pass. Once that all dried, a few days later I applied a final coat of sealer to the floor, covering the tiles and joints for extra protection. And just look at that transformation, from the dark parquet to a bright airy hallway with a timeless checkered pattern. I think it's a stunning upgrade that works in any home. So thanks for watching guys, I hope you like that. If you've got any questions, just drop us a comment below and I'll catch you in the next one.